Hi, this is Pam with Rock Metaphysical. If you don't know what Rock Metaphysical is, it's a metaphysical online magazine, and you can find it by going to ROC metaphysical, all one word.com. It comes out the first of each month, and every month I have articles written by people from pretty much all over the globe. And what I love is that they voluntarily share their articles because they want to help people on a path to higher consciousness or just getting to understand, our humanness and what's going on. And, I have a variety of topics with the authors. They offer all kinds of different things. Every month, I never know what it's going to be. So it's kind of fun to see what will occur. And so what we're doing today is we're going to interview Patti. She's one of our contributing writers, and we're going to get to know her a little bit. And like many people, she's written not one, but two books. So we're going to find out about that. So I guess we're going to start. I know Patti a little bit. We both live in Rochester, New York. It's a hotbed of metaphysical and spirituality. So I always have great people who want to sit down and do the Zoom. So, Patti, I know that you have been teaching about A Course in Miracles. And I guess I would say, give me some background on what you have been doing and moving forward, what's going on.
Okay, well, I'll try to make that short, short and sweet. So I was teaching A Course in Miracles in Rochester and doing some online programs and things like that for quite a long time. I think I ended up doing it about 10 years, maybe even more. I started out with study groups and then started offering classes, and they were specific to Course in Miracles students. That came as a result of just diving into the course myself and finding some amazing insights and experiences that I had. And then I just started sharing, and it just evolved into teaching. And then at some point, I kind of lose track of the years. I think it was because it was pre-pandemic. I got to a point in my book where it really needed my focus. So I decided to stop my programs and stop mentoring and all of that and get the book done. So I every day would set up my workstation and just start working, 6-7 hours a day to get the the book finished. And then that brought us up to the pandemic, which was a whole new world. So yeah.
Well, let me ask a question. So, A Course in Miracles, for those people that don't know what it is, I mean, I'm kind of familiar, but if you can explain what that is, because I think that'll help people understand the next things that you get involved with.
Yes, definitely, because they did led to the opening of the channel to receive messages. So A Course in Miracles is a scribed spiritual text, and it's comprised of a text, a workbook, and a manual in the back that answers some specific questions. It was scribed in 1965, I think it began. It took 7 years to take down the words through a channeled process. And then it was published by Foundation for Inner Peace in, I'm going to say, maybe the early 70s. And then it just took off from there. I started studying A Course in Miracles in 2000. So it hadn't been around that long, but at that time, even then it was considered a really amazing gift that was given to us as a spiritual practice. And it really is an individual practice where you use the guidelines and the teachings to go within yourself, to listen to your own inner spirit. And it helps with undoing egoic thought processes and perceptions, and opens your mind to a whole new perception of the world, yourself, and others. And it has a very specific practice and a way to do that. So I really studied it alone. Well, I had a course buddy, as I called her. We studied it together, but it was very much a quiet practice that I could do every morning. Well, actually, you take it through your whole day and into your evening. So it was very practical and I loved it. So yes, so that's A Course in Miracles in a nutshell, which is hard to summarize.
Right. And I read some information about it. So it's not really religious per se, but it's more spiritual and giving people a positive path to look at the world in a different manner than what we're used to, if I remember right from what I've read.
Yes, it is not affiliated with any religion. It does use certain language that some might think is leaning towards Christianity. I was raised Catholic, so it was a very familiar language to me. However, it doesn't, it has its own teaching, its own principles, its own practices, and it is all about experience. It really is helping us have an experience of our divine nature and our divine world, to perceive others and the world through a spiritual lens. And in order to do that, it helps us identify our blocks, the things that we're holding on to, and it gives us a release process. So that release process might be called forgiveness. And that is a word that can be very loaded, but with A Course in Miracles, it's not affiliated with any specific religious doctrine around forgiveness. It has its own identification or its own meaning of forgiveness. So it stands alone. However, I'll say that all spiritual paths have at its core a basic universal truth. And so throughout A Course in Miracles, it has that line of universal truth that you can find in any religion. And it just has its own means as a way to spiritual awakening.
Yeah, I've had many friends take it, short term and long term, and I know a couple people that teach it. So, and everybody has always commented that it was, a great way to look at things in a different way, to help them to have more peace and a better perspective about things.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so you were doing Course in Miracles and you were teaching, and I know you've got some YouTube videos out there. So what happened next on your path to being an author?
Well, I think I have to start with before I even became A Course in Miracles student. The idea of a spiritual path never really occurred to me. I was, like I said, raised Catholic. I went to a very progressive church. I felt very close to God. I had a great, what we would call a great life. I had I was happily married, had a young child. I did volunteer work, and I was very content with my, the way I was going about life. And for many of us, and myself included, I had a tragedy. And I was 29 years old. And during this tragedy, it shook everything up for me. And I began to question a lot of things that I had taken on as beliefs in my own, what we would call spirituality, but at that time I would say religion. That questioning resulted in me kind of throwing everything out and starting from scratch. And that was very unnerving to do. And yet it was probably one of the most changeable moments of my life, because in hindsight, it's always great. Hindsight's always great. You can look back and say, oh, I see how that led to that and that led to that. But I began searching. And in that searching, I eventually found A Course in Miracles. And what A Course in Miracles introduced me to was this idea that there is within us a spiritual wisdom that is available to us night and day. And it is really the choice between the ego and the spirit. And at that point, I didn't even know I had a choice. I just thought the voice in my head and everything I saw was the way it is. There's this great line in the Course that says, "Would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?" And that's the sort of the way to question egoic thoughts. And I read that line, I'm like, well, I'm right. Of course I'm right. My thoughts are right. So it was a wonderful opening to me to recognize that there was something else other than my thinking, my perception, my ideas of God, my ideas of who I was. So in that questioning, I came upon the a spiritual channel and a spiritual answers. That led to an opening of receiving messages, and the messages I started receiving were in the dream state. And I had a couple of dreams, what I call spiritual dreams, way before I came to A Course in Miracles. And I didn't know what they were. They were, the first one I had was at this time of the tragedy in my life. And I didn't know what I had just experienced. And I remember coming downstairs in the morning and telling my mother my dream. And she said, "God spoke to you." And I was like, what, what does that mean? What does that mean? So I began, when I was struggling with things, I started to tap into this resource that I had, that it was easier for me to get to when I was unconscious, because then my ego was asleep. So instead of just dreaming of egoic things like my fears and things like that we normally think of dreams as a way to recognize what's going on in our unconscious, I began to present a question or a dilemma or a challenge before I went to sleep and said, "Hey, what do you got to lose? According to A Course in Miracles, there's a spirit that's my soul or my wisdom, and I can ask it anything I want." And so I would ask, and then I would receive these messages through the symbols in dreams.
So that's very similar, like to Edgar Cayce. He was called the Dreaming Prophet. He would have a specific question. A lot of times it was medical, and he would go into a sleep state and have messages come, and I would love to see it in action, but I think he used to, recount or talk while he was sleeping, and someone would take notes and he would come up with answers for medical problems.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard of Edgar Cayce at that point. I actually am looking back, it was a pretty organic process for me. So I didn't know a lot about a lot of things. And I was just stumbling through it and saying, well, this seems to work. Let's try this. And then when I started to research what's going on, that's when I found, oh, this is something that you see all throughout every religion, Christianity, I mean, you name it. There's this understanding as I'm not sure who coined the phrase, but God speaks to us through dreams and visions. This is the way, it's a channel, it's a way that God can get through to us. What I would say is interesting about what I had given to me was it wasn't necessarily like a message where you would have a sentence. It was a story. It was kind of like parables, where I was given a dream and it played out a story. And within that story was the answer that I was seeking.
Well, whether you get, like, do I buy the White House or the Brown House, and you have a dream and you see the White House and something positive about it, or maybe it's representative, like the white rose or, a brown flower, and you pick one and you're like, oh, so it can be symbolic or the actual answer in some cases.
In these particular dreams, what I call spiritual dreams and visions that I have, they're symbols, but they're universal understandings. And so I would say they're answers, they're symbols, and the answers are within the symbol.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is one thing, again, I'll say an organic process that I had. I never studied dreams. I never studied the meanings of dreams. So I would have these incredible dreams and I would wake up and it's like, okay, that was something. And then I would write it down and I would just get quiet. My dream interpretation also was part of me tapping into my inner wisdom, and I would gain these insights from that sitting in contemplation over the symbols. And they would just come to me, these insights would come to me. And then I would say, oh, okay, I get that. And then the next part of it that was also so important to me, and this is really what I gained with A Course in Miracles, it taught me about practical application. And A Course in Miracles has you take these profound spiritual principles and apply them in your actual life, in your relationships, at your jobs. So you have a different experience, and the experience is the teacher.
Mhm.
So I would then take my messages or my answers and I would say, okay, now I'm going to apply this. And the next time this happens, here's my answer. So let's say I'm having a relationship issue and I receive the answer in the dream as to what the real issue is. And it's always trying to lead me towards harmony and peace and love. And I would apply the answer in my daily exchange, and then I would have quite a different experience.
Okay, so maybe we'll have a timeline. So it sounds like to me you were probably attuned before you even knew what was going on. That there was some stuff there spiritually, but like anybody, we're like, oh, who knows, and why would I even have that? And then you did A Course in Miracles, which kind of started you on your path, and then you started having recognition of your dreams and journaling, which is so important. I hear a lot of people talk about, you should always write your dreams down, because you might see a pattern or an answer to something just like you. And then you've taken it to the next step. So your next step is you've written 2 books.
Yeah. So the next step so what happened for me in writing the book, I just want to talk about writing a Dreaming Miracles, which is the working title. It hasn't quite been decided yet, but Dreaming Miracles is what I'm calling it. Through that writing process, which was also very healing, it was a very healing process for me to write such intimate experiences in my own life and share that with others and get in touch with what the spirit was teaching me. Through that writing process, I became, I think, more trusting, more open of this inner voice or this inner wisdom or my soul, whatever language we use. I became more trusting of it. And after I had gone through the whole writing process, had finished the book, had sent it out to publishers, had received a contract for the book, I had a dream that introduced me to what I would call a spirit guide. And in that dream, I was asking questions of the spirit guide. And that led me, as I woke up from that dream, I realized I think the next step for me is to receive messages while I'm awake.
Okay.
So that's the process of sort of I'm safe. I feel better about it when I'm asleep, and I feel like it's more clear and I'm not getting in the way of these messages at all. And then it became, I think I'm, ready now to be able to get my mind, my thoughts out of the way and receive these messages. So I took, I think it was about 6, maybe not that many months, maybe 5 months. And every day I would channel a message. I would ask a question and channel a message. And I didn't know how long that was going to go on. I'd sit down in the morning and not know if anything was going to come through. And when it was all said and done, there was 50 messages, and it took on its own life. After I'm looking at it all months later, I'm like, oh, I think this is a book. So that kind of happened organically as well.
Wow, I kind of like it, things just kind of roll along and they just happen, and you see wonderful results from it. So yay for you.
Well, and I think I share that process of it's almost like a closed mind to a completely open mind really has to do with a lot of trust. And you have to, you're starting to trust this inner wisdom, you're starting to trust yourself. You're becoming less afraid of what you might discover in your unconscious or what you might hear. So as the years went on and I became more open, I think that's really all of us. I think it's just a symbol of our journey, really, what we would call a spiritual path, is we start out with a certain set of ideas and perceptions and thoughts and viewpoints of the world and my relationship, me to you. And it's a very closed box, and we feel very safe and secure in that box until something happens, like a pandemic or something. Something happens personally in our lives that sort of shakes everything up, and things aren't as you thought they were, or the rules that you live by don't seem to work anymore. And then you begin looking for answers that are resonate within yourself. And through that receiving of those answers, that's a path of learning to trust, listening. How do you listen? How do you quiet your mind? How do you trust what you're receiving? How do you then put that into your life so it becomes a different experience for you? So all of that journey with me is really all of our journey. And I think that's why when I would share my dreams or vision messages within my programs or something like that with A Course in Miracles, I realized they were universal. It wasn't, I'm not coming with a problem that at some level all of us struggle with at some point. And therefore the answer is universal as well. And I would get that feedback in the classes where my messages were then speaking to other people. Otherwise, I would just have kept it in my dream journal.
Well, maybe it was synchronistic that you had a sounding board to share with your students, and they would, agree and be like, wow, I've had a similar thought or experience, or I've been mulling something over and you've presented information that helps me make a decision. So, things work out in mysterious ways.
Yes, they do.
All right, so just to kind of recap, so you've got the 2 books, and the first book is about your dreams, and you give an interpretation of what the dream what's a little overview of the book, the dream book.
Yeah, so the dream book is really a healing book. And the reason I changed that in using healing instead of dreaming is the dream book, when people think a dream book, they think it's going to teach us how to dream, how to use our dreams for messages and things like that. It's not necessarily a how-to in terms of dreaming. What it is a book of universal hardships and challenges that we all face. And I present them as my own struggle in a way that the reader would identify, oh yeah, I've struggled with that. And then I give the dream, and the dream is actually quite an entertaining story. The spirit can be it's very entertaining. I thought they were very entertaining. And so I write the dream out, but in in a kind of captivating way. So it's like a fiction book almost you're reading. And then I go into the dream interpretation that I was given, the meaning and the message that we can all hear relating to that one problem. And like, for instance, one of the questions that I presented before I went to sleep was, I was so frustrated because I was not what I would say experiencing abundance in my life. And I was doing all the affirmations, all the things that I had ever learned. And it's like, why am I still feeling this way where I can't seem to have this fullness in my life? And I got this really amazing dream. And then in the book, I share my interpretation, not my interpretation, but the interpretation I was given. And then I give examples about how, okay, I went and used this, and this is what happened to me when I used this answer, and how my life just changed in this area completely. And then I end the chapter with what I call contemplation questions for the reader. So they can take their struggle and they can use the message themselves. And I just give them guidelines about, it's exactly how I did it. And I guide them through how they can take this message and actually use it in their own circumstance so they can break free of whatever that block is.
Oh, all right. I think I'm going to have to buy that one. And then that kind of led you on the next path, which is the next book. And I mean, they're both coming out soon. The first one, did you say May?
I think we're hoping for May. We're aiming for May. We're sort of at the tying up all the loose ends to that. And then I think it's going to be maybe 4 months after that. The next book is called, the working title is Freedom Now. And it addresses your experience in the present moment and how you can use your present moment, whatever's happening, to experience spiritual awareness. So it takes our everyday, like Dreaming Miracles is our everyday problems and concerns, and teaches us about how to break free from all of our limitations and the egoic ways in which we live by the spirit. Freedom Now is this awareness of how can we hear about being spiritually conscious. We hear about spiritual awakening. We hear about living from fifth dimension reality. We hear about ushering this reality into our world so we experience heaven on earth. This is the book that talks about that specifically, where we are taught and given exercises and understandings about being in the moment and experiencing what some of us might call heaven on earth, or experiencing spiritual reality that literally changes our world. So it's similar, but it's almost like another step into a different type of spiritual practice.
So it's kind of like it's your growth. It sounds like, you were doing, the dreaming and getting answers and, opening up. And then the next phase is becoming more attuned and more open to, living in the moment and, getting guidance or, messages to, further your path.
Yes, I mean, it is really symbolic of my whole path. This is my whole path, and it's not lost on me. I get it. I get where I'm going. And this is what I mean about it's similar, I think, to all of us. When we're ready, we then receive the next teaching, the next practice, whatever is helpful to gaining that awareness that people on a spiritual path are looking for. And I say they're looking for it, even if they don't know they're looking for it, because it is the thing that brings about peace the sense of unity, connection, love, and experiencing really the spiritual gifts while we're on this earth, and how we share that with others to uh, live our life more abundantly, and to live in a world of peace. And as we hear often, that really begins with us. It begins with our own inner journey, and then we have that more to share with the world. So yeah.
Okay, well, we could listen to you as a good example of why these two books would be good for us to read. So you may see this video in May. It'll accompany Patti's article, and there may be some news about your books, but we'll have Patti's website on the magazine in May. And then maybe if I have information about the book, I can put that on there too. So if people are interested, they can go right to the company that's publishing. Is it going to be on Amazon?
Yes, I'm sure it'll be on Amazon. It'll probably be in a couple of different places. The
Yeah.
publisher's name is Sunbury Press. So yes, I'm sure it'll be easily found.
All right. Well, and too, if you get covers for the books, you
I
can
will.
give me copies of the covers. So,
Okay.
we can put that along with your article for May.
Sounds great.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to
No, I
share?
just want to say thank you. Thanks for offering this avenue through the magazine and through YouTube, and all the ways that you gift our community, really, to allow these messages to come through. Different authors, different teachers, different people who are writing poems and artwork, and all the ways that we're sharing what we're learning, so we can all grow together. And you do a lot for our community. So I just wanted to say thanks for that.
Well, thanks. Well, I'm a student at heart, and open to learning all kinds of things. So it's a win-win for me. So I like it. It's my own selfishness, but it's good. So, all right. Well, I'm going to hit the stop button, and we'll see you in person, hopefully.
I hope so.